200 children are living in Jamaica. Of every 1,000 children, 10 are the subject of child abuse. The Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, has embarked on a campaign, Every Child Deserves Protection, to educate you, our viewers, about the importance of collaborating to protect our children. It is the duty of every parent and the wider Jamaica to understand that all of us have a personal responsibility to keep our children safe. Good evening and welcome to the CPFSA's Virtual Child Protection Forum. I'm your host, Dervan Malcolm. Before we begin, we invite you to join us in observing a moment's silence in honoring the memory of the late former CEO of the CPFSA, Mary Allison Anderson McLean. She was an extraordinary leader, an exceptional woman, and a true advocate for the rights of women and children. May her soul rest in peace. No doubt the late Allison McLean would be encouraged by the staging of this Child Protection Forum this evening. Joining us in studio are the Honorable Alando Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and Mrs. Rosalie Gage Gray, Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA. Joining us online via Zoom are child psychologist and President of the Jamaican Psychological Society, Dr. Kai Morgan, Mr. Warren Thompson, Deputy Registrar, National Children's Registry, NCR, and Mr. Robert Williams, Regional Director, CPFSA, Southeast Region. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, our viewers, for joining us at home, especially the children. You too can be a part of the discussion by submitting your questions and comments on the various platforms listed on your screen. Now, let's get right to the questions. Mrs. Gage Gray, first of all, what is the role and mandate of the CPFSA?
Listen, good evening. The Children and Family Support Unit of the CPFSA is, let me go again. The CPFSA is an executive agency under the portfolio of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. We have the mandate for children who are in need of care and protection. These are children who have been abused, abandoned, neglected, or otherwise at risk. Children who are exhibiting extreme behavioral problems, and we provide services through varied programs within the agency to intervene into these circumstances that are presented by these children that we serve.
Can you, thank you very much, Mrs. Gage Gray. Now, can you outline for us the various forms of child abuse and help us to identify some of those signs of a child being abused?
So we have physical abuse. This is where children are hit, whether by belts or any implement that causes welts or wheals on the skin. These could be pinching, where, it would leave some mark. We have emotional abuse, where words are used to degrade children. Sexual abuse, of course, is where they are sexually violated. Their sexual grooming, where you might not have physical intercourse, but based on words used, based on touching, that can be deemed abuse as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in general, those are the types of abuse. Neglect, which is very prevalent in terms of the reports we receive, not providing adequate supervision, not providing the basic needs of the child, food, health, education. These are forms of abuse that are meted out to children.
Thank you, Mrs. Gage Gray. And Dr. Kai Morgan, no doubt these acts have serious implications for the mental state of our children, apart from the obvious physical abuse. Based on what you have seen and perhaps are still seeing in your practice, what can you tell us about the impact of child abuse on our children?
So the abuse, essentially, what we're talking about, the impact is going to be trauma, right? So trauma has a far-reaching effect. So we're not talking about even 6 months from now, 1 year from now. We're talking about adulthood, way into adulthood, right? That this has an impact. So when children are abused, it causes actually a very clear response in the brain. And this is important for people to understand. In the brain, which impacts their development. It impacts and it stunts their emotional development, right? Even sometimes their physical development, their academic development, their learning. It has very far-reaching impact. So we may see things like depression, we may see anxiety, we may see even behavioral problems. So children are acting, as we sometimes say, badly, right? And these things may all be underneath the surface coming from the trauma that they've experienced.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Morgan. I was reading, Mrs. Gage Gray, that last year the CPFSA dealt with about 14,000 cases of child abuse. Goodness, that's a lot. What sort of psychosocial support do these children get?
Okay, so the reports come to us through the National Children's Registry, and they are assigned to investigators who go into the field, to the homes, to schools, to the community, to do the investigation, to confirm whether or not the reports received are so. And once they go in and identify, then we work with other stakeholders to provide support. We have a psychology unit. We have 4 clinical psychologists. We also have 2 social workers who is in our Smiles Mobile, which is a mobile mental health unit, and interventions are done. We do screening. We use the Strength and Difficulties questionnaire as a basic screening tool. Also the ACEs, which is a 10-point indicator for children who would have experienced trauma. And this baseline assessment is done so that we can start intervention. Once the social workers who do counseling deal with the cases, if it requires more clinical intervention, and they are referred to the clinical psychologist. And where there might be psychiatric or other serious issues, disorders that might be discovered, then we refer them to external sources. So for example, the child guidance clinics in the Ministry of Health is a good support for us in terms of treating with those children. But I must say that the psychological impact of violence and trauma that the children suffer as a result of the abuse they have is causing a severe mental health issue among our children in Jamaica. And that requires a lot of clinical and medium to long-term therapeutic, as you heard Dr. Morgan said. That's one of the areas that was a critical area for us as we seek to address the issues that come. But for us to really grapple with the issue, we need to stop the abuse, which is why we have been having these forums, because we always will be tracing down these 14,000 cases. So we have to educate, sensitize our parents, our caregivers, our community members, and Jamaicans on a whole to protect our children. And what does it mean to protect your children? Because sometimes we feel they know, but not everybody knows how to protect our children. And forums like these, we give the information for them to protect the children.
Minister Terrelong, how do you think we're doing as a nation when it comes to the care and protection of our children?
You know, Dervon, it's a very interesting question, because on the one hand, we have made some gains, but globally, you know, in the larger sense, we're not doing as well as we ought to be doing. There have been too many instances of children being abused, and again, you know, the abuse, it's physical, it's psychological, it's emotional. You know, then you get into when you get into the sexual violence. I mean, very, very horrific. And then there are the deaths as well. You know, so on that front, it behoves every single Jamaican to understand that as a nation, as a community of people, it is our responsibility to love our children. It is our responsibility to protect them and ensure their safety. When we speak of the old adage, it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, it really does. It takes an entire nation committed to the growth and development and prosperity of our children to ensure that the laws are enacted and also that the relevant values and attitudes are also in place. So child abuse is as simple as telling your child that you're coming like a workless mama or you're coming like a workless papa. That is emotional abuse. It is also psychological abuse when you say to a child, you now come on to nothing. I'm sorry say you did born and you know what I mean? And we have mothers and fathers or men and women who have actually reproduced and caused the birth of children who refer to their children as it. Me should have did kick it down. Me should have did thump it down. And you know what I mean? And when you say to even some of the fathers that, listen, you can't refer to your child as me get a pitney. It's not a situation where you're speaking about a pair of shoes that you got or a football that you got or a car that you got. This is a living, breathing human being with rights. So we need to get past that stage, Dervon, and to our listeners and our viewers, when you think that, oh, well, a child does not have rights or children should be seen but not heard, those days are done. So one of the things that we've done is last year in November, we've completely enacted and adopted the National Plan of Action, which is an integrated response for children and violence. So essentially it is, and this is exactly part of what we're doing now, to re-educate Jamaicans, to re-educate our parents. So we are teaching them about ways to protect their children, the different forms of abuse, and how you can also get help. That is very, very important. So even at our agency, the CPFSA, we've hired more social workers over the last 2 years. What that has done is that we've seen a 100% clearing up of the backlog in investigating the cases of child abuse. So on average, we have, let's say, 1,200 cases each month of child abuse, but we're able to clear that up because we've actually hired more social workers. So one of the recommendations I've made also is going into the school term in September, and even more so because of the onset of COVID and how it has impacted our children, that psychosocial impact of the coronavirus, in addition to everything else that our children have to face every single day, it is important that we train our guidance counselors. In fact, the first set of guidance counselors, they have been trained as well, because we want to ensure that within the classroom setting, we can offer some sort of counseling seminars that is more akin to what, let's say, Dr. Kai Morgan and her team would be doing. We do understand that not every parent would be able to afford a clinical psychologist, etc., or that we understand also that even some of our older children, they may not readily want to go into the guidance counselor's office, because in Jamaica we have this perception that if you say you need help, or if you're not, and you know what, I'll say this to our children and our parents, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to say, some feel a little weight today and I'm kind of depressed and boy, I'm stressed out, I'm in a no war go on, and it's okay to reach out and ask for help. One of the things we recognize is that some 30% of our Jamaican children, our youth and adolescents, they actually suffer from some sort of mental disorder. So it's important for us to get them that help within the school system, within a structured classroom setting, so there are plans to put that in place. So we're heading in the right direction, but so much more needs to be done because we need to stop abusing them.
And so much more to discuss on this CPFSA Virtual Child Protection Forum. It's time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be debunking, dismissing, trashing some of those myths surrounding child abuse. Stay with us.
Protect the children, please. Me and they gonna protect the children, please.
It shouldn't hurt to be a child. Every day, many of our children are physically, sexually, emotionally abused and neglected by persons who should care for them, protect them, and love them. Abuse leaves our children with scars that last a lifetime. Abuse robs our children of the joy of childhood. Speak out if you know or suspect a child is being abused. call 888-PROTECT or email report@childprotection.gov.gm or visit any CPFSA office island-wide. Every child deserves protection. Every child deserves your love.
That's so sweet.
Protect the children, please. Me a beg you no. Protect the children, please.
Welcome back to the CPFSA's Virtual Child Protection Forum. I'm your host, Dervan Malcolm. With us in studio are the Honorable Alando Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and Mrs. Rosalie Gage Gray, the Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. Joining us online via Zoom are clinical psychologist and president of the Jamaican Psychological Society, Dr. Kai Morgan, Mr. Warren Thompson, Deputy Registrar, National Children's Registry, NCR, and Mr. Robert Williams, Regional Director, CPFSA Southeast Region. Thanks again for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before the break, we touched briefly on the topic of child abuse and its many manifestations. Let's delve a little deeper now into this issue by asking Robert Williams about some of these myths. We need you to help us to really shed these myths, to get rid of them, to set us straight once and for all, Robert Williams.
Good evening, everyone. So there are two such myths I want to speak on in brief. One as it relates to physical abuse. Now, there are many Jamaicans, and some may be listening to us now, parents, guardians, who believe that if I beat this child in a way that will cause severe pain, if I lay on some stripes that will leave a mark, if I beat this child in a way where the child will maybe crying for days, then the more likely it is that the child will change a particular behavior. But this we know is not true. This we know cause more harm than good, because a lot of these children are really traumatized. A lot of these children will evoke uncontrollable anger, and they will react in ways that sometimes we say now that they are uncontrollable. And Dr. Kai Morgan may want to speak of this later on, that what we are really doing, we are emotionally scarring these children. So those among us who believe that the beating, the hard beating, and if I give you a burn or a mark, then it will change a behavior, we are so wrong. And we need to stop doing that kind of parenting and stop doing that kind of discipline, because it's really not discipline, it's really abusing. I want to also speak on the matter of sexual myth. Now, there are some men among us who believe that if they have certain illnesses having to do with sexual matters, and they get involved sexually with a virgin, a young girl, then this disease might be cured, or it will take away this disease. Now, sometimes when you see the age of the men who are accused of these sexual misconduct, you realize that something is wrong here. Hey, something not right. Because why would a man of 50 and 40 and 60 be going to have sexual relations with a child of 6 and 7? Because they feel if I go with a young virgin, then I will be cured. And that's a myth that needs to go through the window tonight. What we're doing, we're scarring and maiming the children. We see these matters come before the court from time to time. Sometimes we are in shock and awe, and it's because of cultural myths. And we need to wake up and get rid of some of these, because what they'll do, they'll cause serious harm, great harm that some of our children will never recover from.
Thank you very much, Robert Williams. And this is one of the reasons why we have to always know where our children are. I'm thinking now, Mr. Williams, Warren Thompson, Mr. Thompson, I'm thinking of a parent who is at home now. Maybe her son or daughter went to school for one of the CSEC or some of the CSEC and CAPE prep sessions. And well, it's after 8 o'clock now. The child is not yet home. The parent has been calling and calling, not getting the child on the cell phone. What does that parent do? Does that parent sit and wait to see if the child will eventually come home, or does that parent take up the phone and call the police or the children's registry or 888 Protect? What determines how soon that parent acts to find out where this child is and what is taking the child so long to get home?
Thank you very much for that question, Dervan. It's a very important one, because many Jamaicans think that if a child goes missing, you have to wait for 24 hours before you can report it. Now, the guideline is that once you cannot account for the child's location, report it. Report it by going to your nearest police station or contacting us at the Children's Registry, and we'll help you through the process. But report it so that we can issue an alert and help you to have that child recovered. So even if you're going to wait to see the child returns home, report it first. Report it so that we can take action on our part to have that child recovered. Now, when you're reporting it, it's important that you do some things. You need to have a photograph of your child, hopefully one taken within the last 6 months. From time to time, we see parents take photographs for children, and the photographs were taken years ago. So take a recent photograph so that we can issue a picture for a poster with the child's photograph, so persons can look out. And I will tell you, Dervan, that we have had a number of cases where persons have called in tips to say that they saw this child here or there. And we have contacted the police, and they have made operations based on those tips. So don't wait, just report it once you can find where your child is, or you don't know where your child is.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Speaking of reporting, Robert Williams, how about reporting child abuse? What does that process entail?
Okay, so it's an easy process, and all Jamaicans can be involved in reporting a matter of child abuse, because we have offices, CPFSA, we have offices in all parish capitals, and you can walk into any of these offices. Any day we have an intake officer in the office who will take your report. No, you can't do that, then you can call the office and make the report. But we have a number, Mr. Warren just mentioned the number, 888 Protect. And we say 888 Protect because it's catchy and it's easy. And even the children will remember 888 Protect. But it is 776-8328. So that's the number. So we also do reporting via our email. So it's report@cpfsa@childprotection.gov.jm. So it's report@childprotection.gov.jm. And we also have a WhatsApp number that you can WhatsApp your report. You can WhatsApp our report to us, and we'll deal with it. And that is, of course, 876-878-2882. That's our WhatsApp number. So reporting can be easy, and we want everybody to report. So we have various modalities of reporting. One of them can be applied.
Thanks, Mr. Williams. Mr. Thompson, what are we seeing in terms of the numbers of missing children in Jamaica? Is that number going down? Is it increasing? Has it stabilized? Is it tapering off? What are you seeing?
So, well, we have seen for the past 2 years, Dervan, a real reduction in the number of reports made for missing children. We're coming down from figures around 2,000 per year, and for 2018 and 2019, we were in the 1,500 region. So it's the lowest that it has ever been since the Ananda Alert program really started, other than for the first year, of course. Now, since 2020, we have the number is lower than customary, and perhaps because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
From what perspective?
Pardon me?
In what ways would the COVID-19 have impacted the numbers?
So, well, we saw almost a 50% reduction in the number of reports received during since March. So, if I can give you an example, for January to April 2019, we received 532 reports of missing children. And since January to April 2020, we have received 384 reports. So that's like a 39% reduction in the number of reports made. We have our recovery rate since January has been about 71%, but for the same period last year, it was about 85%, 82% to be exact. So we had more children recovered last year in terms of being a proportion of the number of reports made. But still, we are glad that we have had a reduction. And maybe it's because of the COVID-19 restrictions, more children stayed home. We're glad that they stayed home, but certainly we don't believe that children run away from good homes or from good places, let me put it that way. They run away from situations. And, we are concerned that although they did not run away, they're staying home with those situations. And we are encouraging children to contact us by the same numbers that Robert gave. Once you have an issue at home, if you are being abused or harassed in any way, contact us at all the numbers, email us, send us a WhatsApp message, and we will do all we can on our part to provide you with the assistance.
And in the short space of time we have before the break, what have you found is the most common experience as far as children running away is concerned? Why are they running away, those who run away?
So for the children who run away, the main reason is often family conflicts, violence. Children usually run away because they can't get along with someone, or they have some disagreement, or they're being harassed or violated. That's the word that they like to use. But certainly there are some cases where children run away because of peer pressure. But the main factor, I will tell you, is conflict and violence within the home.
Mm-hmm. And the prevalence of, what would be next in line in terms of the reasons?
So as I said, family conflict and violence. I spoke about peer pressure. And then there are children who are pulled by factors too. So maybe it's not peer pressure, but some children want freedom. They feel like the home is too restrictive. They want to spend time with friends. And I will tell you, most time children run away from home. They go to stay with friends, which is why it's also important to encourage parents not to harbor children without having a kind of conversation with them and their parents to ensure that the parents know that they are with you. We have seen too many cases where parents have children staying in their homes and the parents of those children do not know where they are. So it's very important that all of us take responsibility for all Jamaican children. Every child deserves protection, and they are all our children.
And as much as we don't want to encourage them to run away, if they do run, they hopefully they would be coming into the arms of the CPFSA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Run here.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We're going to, as we say in Jamaican parlance, stick a pin right there and take a short break. When we come back, we'll be taking a look at some of the psychosocial needs of our children. We have some questions as well coming in from our viewers online. And yeah, please keep them coming. Go ahead, continue to visit the platforms listed on the screen. Our panelists will be answering as many of those questions as possible during our Q&A segment. But even if we're not able to answer those questions on air this evening, rest assured, the team from the CPFSA will be going through every single one of your questions. We'll be back in just a moment.
Protect the children, please. Me, I beg you, no. Protect the children, please.
Oftentimes, we call our children bad, rude, and even swear at them. Sometimes we get angry and feel like spanking them with belts, iron, and other implements. Corporal punishment causes childhood aggression and other levels of behavioral problems. No child should be spanked as a means of discipline. So please, beg you, try positive disciplining. talk to your child, take away privileges, assign chores. These are some of the ways to positively discipline your child. Let us end corporal punishment.
A message from the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA.
To all our young kings and queens, your schools are waiting to welcome you back, but they cannot open their doors unless we beat this coronavirus, COVID-19. Do your part in the fight. Stay home. Stay safe.
Protect the children, please. Me a beg you no. Protect the children, please.
Welcome back to the CPFSA's Virtual Child Protection Forum. I'm your host, Dervan Malcolm. With us in studio are the Honorable Orlando Terrelong, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and Mrs. Rosalie Gage Gray, the Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. Joining us online via Zoom are clinical psychologist and president of the Jamaican Psychological Society, Dr. Kai Morgan, Mr. Warren Thompson, Deputy Registrar, National Children's Registry, NCR, and Mr. Robert Williams, Regional Director, CPFSA Southeast Region. Thanks again for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, shout out to those of you watching and listening at home and wherever, especially the children. Now, before the break, we scratched the surface of the issue of missing children, including those who, for one reason or another, might choose to run away from home. Let's continue that discussion now. In fact, we want to go to Dr. Kai Morgan. Dr. Morgan, please give us a sense of the best way to cater to the psychosocial needs of children who have run away, whether a one-time runaway or habitual runaway.
So regardless of the reason that you've run away, we want to be clear that our children need to be heard. They want to be listened to. So there are many reasons, as Mr. Thompson laid out, that they may run away for, and the majority of them do fall within areas of conflict, right? So whether they're not getting along with a sibling, a cousin, a grandma, whoever it is, that there is some kind of conflict in the home that they're trying to escape from, right? So yes, there are the odd cases where it's not that, but we have to listen to them. So we have to hear them from a caregiver, parental guardianship position. Listening to our children is really important. So it doesn't mean that they would get what they want, right? When you've heard them, but actually hearing them and being able to empathize with what it is their needs are is really important. We do have a habit, like I think Mr. Williams mentioned before, or I think it was Minister Terrelong, that we think that children don't have their own rights, they don't have their own feelings, they don't have their own emotions, and they do. So they are building all of that, and they want to feel safe, they want to feel emotionally safe, they want to feel like they belong, they want to feel nurtured and loved and cared for, they want to feel like they can achieve, and there's somebody to say, you know, you made a good effort, you did a good job, you tried, right? And anything like that. They want all of that. So we need to hear what are the reasons behind why they're running away. There has to be a reason. We're motivated to do everything that we do, and there is what we have to understand. What is that motivation for them running away?
Thank you.
And that will help. That will help to guide us then to understand what do we need to do from there. What action, what intervention needs to take place once we understand that.
And a good segue to you, Robert Williams. How does the CPFSA assist our children who have behavioral problems? What are some of the ways in which you serve our children in that regard?
So children with behavioral problem is a real problem in Jamaica at this time, yes. And one of the things that we do is we have established a unit, the Child and Family Support Unit, where those children and their parents are normally engaged. We normally do sessions, yes, behavior modification sessions and counseling sessions with them. So on any given Wednesday or other days of the week, you can find a parent and children, sometimes children alone, sometimes parents alone, doing sessions, yes? to change a particular behavior. Normally we say to parents, do not wait until it is way out of control when you are now saying this child is uncontrollable. Once you see a behavior that is beyond you, you know you need help, well, come early. Because when you take a boy at 14 and 15, you know, it's very late. But you sometimes you see this happening at 10, at 9 years old. Take them, because we have sessions. No, we have, Mrs. Grace spoke about our psychology unit. And we have 4 such units operating across the island, because there are some children who need to see the psychologist. Yes, and so in that unit, they would normally do a screening. Yes, so Ms. Grace spoke to of the strength and difficulty tool. Then we use also the adverse childhood experiences tool, and we normally do these sessions. And from the assessment, the psychologist and the clinical social worker normally engage them through that kind of therapy. Sometimes we refer them out as well, because sometimes we realize that we need help from outside, and sometimes we use the child guidance clinics, and sometimes we use private persons like Dr. Kai. So the CPFSA, we know that behavioral problem is a real problem. A lot of parents don't know what to do. So that is why the CPFSU, that unit was established, and the psychology unit to give more support and more clinical support and therapeutic support. So we have that kind of those sessions for children with behavioral problems. So we're saying to parents, don't stay at home and abuse the children. Don't try to beat it out of them, because it will not happen. We're saying take them so that they can be engaged by the professionals.
One more question for you, Mr. Williams, because there are so many parents in this country, and even grown-up children now, so to speak, who will tell you that, yeah, they got a whipping or two, and it didn't do them anything wrong, and they didn't see that as abuse. And there are parents and guardians right now who hit their children, and they don't see that as abuse. Is there a distinction to be made between discipline and abuse, disciplining a child and abusing that child in the process?
Of course, Dervon, there's a clear distinction. For us, discipline is a process. Discipline is applying a methodology to get a desired behavior. So we normally do some things to evoke a particular behavior. And so we're saying that all children need to be disciplined, because we need to have children conforming to certain behavior, because it cannot be just any kind of behavior. Contrary to that, we punish. And when we punish after the behavior has been done. And in punishing the child, that is when a lot of parents abuse the children. Because when you start to burn, when you start to put a child hands in at oil, when you start to put pepper and body part, yes, when you start to ask your child to ingest things that should not be ingested, when you start to tie children, then it tells me that no discipline is there, because you are actually hurting and you're actually administering cruelty to child. And the section 9 of the CCPA said if you administer those kinds of cruelty where the child has marks and welts and the child can prove that this kind of treatment was meted out to me, that is abuse. So when we say we're beating a child for the behavior to change, no, we said it's a myth earlier, and it's really a myth. We can't beat a behavior out of a child, because that behavior is developed over time. So we're saying spend time to discipline early. It can't be anything go. Set boundaries for your children. Be there to see that, no, this behavior needs some work. I need to do some work at this point in time. But don't say, well, I got some beating, so when the child is, I'm going to beat the child because it's going to change. Things and time have changed. And we're saying persons will be locked up, people will be brought to books for cruelty to child under the guise of discipline, because they are different.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Dr. Morgan, does discipline have to necessarily be harsh? Help us help some parents and guardians listening to us who are thinking that that's the only way. It has to be harsh. It has to be firm. Are there more positive ways of disciplining our children?
Absolutely, there are more positive ways, and it takes a whole change about how you think, which is what Mr. Williams is alluding to. There is that you have to think about what is it you're trying to achieve? What is it you're trying to achieve with this? That's the problem with discipline versus abuse. Because when we are abusing children, we are angry, we are, irritated, and that is what comes out. So you feel upset and you're trying to get it out, right? But you're not teaching the child anything but using violence to solve a problem. And then we wonder how violence begets violence, right? So then that also is the message that you're really sending. So when we are trying to positively discipline, which is very important and which is very much a journey, and this is a long-term thing, you think carefully about what is it you're trying to achieve with this. Am I trying to teach them a particular value? Right? Am I trying to teach them empathy for others because they would not, they beat up somebody else or they got into a fight? Am I trying to teach them how to be independent? Am I teaching them responsibility? What am I trying to teach them with this disciplinary strategy? Right? So when you think about and it depends on the age as well, right? So we have to know again, how are we dealing with children, at what age they are, at what developmental stage are they, right? So understanding them, because all 2-year-olds are not alike, right? So understanding where your child is, knowing your child is important. So we use things like, sometimes for some children who very much fear just being out of line, and no could be enough for a toddler, right? For a little toddler, a little 2-year-old or 3-year-old or so, right? We do have some with more, let's say more boisterous, if you will, personalities. And so you may use things like withdrawing particular privileges, right? Or things like, well, you're going to have to take a little time out, right? Excuse me, right? You may not be able to play, sit down over there. Sorry. And don't worry, I don't have COVID. but I'm not there in studio anyway. So, but you take a little time out. You have to sit down here, and when you get older, you're explaining a little bit more. You're thinking a lot about what you've done and the impact. And again, this is an engagement. Discipline is an engaging kind of activity. It's the child and the caregiver, the guardian, the parents, actually helping the child to understand. Right? As they get older, there are some paying attention to some natural consequences of their behaviors that will happen. So, for example, in a simple example, they didn't do the homework, right? So instead of facilitating them, and then maybe you let them stay up a little bit later and you help them with it, let them go to school and get whatever consequence that comes with not doing what they were supposed to do. The natural consequences of what happens, right? To you as well. So you may get a lower grade. That's a consequence, right? And for a certain child, for a particular child, that may matter, right? So you have to also, again, I go back to understanding our children, because you have to understand what motivates them. That may not be very much teaching what you'd like to teach about responsibility, for example, for another child. So you have to think about, again, your child, right? And as they get older, we're more able to negotiate with them and allow them a part in a role in what it is that we're doing in terms of discipline. So they've done something, some kind of incorrect behavior, and you're talking to them, okay, so what do you think, right? What do you think should be the consequence of this thing that you've done? These are more our teenagers now, right? What do you think should be the consequence? Maybe they don't know, and maybe you have some suggestions, but maybe they have some suggestions, and you decide at that point. And again, hearing them doesn't mean that they get what they want, right? So they may suggest something that you don't think that's really appropriate, or that's teaching the value or the virtue that you would like to teach. And so you say, well, I don't think so. And you make another suggestion, right? So it's important as well to focus on the positives. As human beings, we do it a lot, that we focus a lot. Okay, the child made a mistake, or the child did something negative or incorrect or didn't listen or whatever it might have been, and immediately that's what gets highlighted about the child, right? And that's what you remember, and that's what we keep bringing up, that the child did this, the child did that, etc. So there's also some time that must be spent with focusing on positive things that the child has done. Consistency is also critical, and consistently following through on what you say you're going to do, right? What you say is going to be the consequence for the behavior. Let's follow through. Let's be consistent about what we're doing, because at the end of the day, then there's that breeds disrespect, right? Because then, oh well, she's just talking, him just talking. Tomorrow again, whatever happens, etc. Right? So that's important. Those, I think, are some important points that we need to remember. And it's not easy. So I think for us as caregivers, as parents, as guardians, that you have to take care of yourself, and you have to be thinking about yourself too, right? A lot, so that you are able to be a better caregiver. There's nothing like that to be a better caregiver. Then you're able to manage your own emotions. Then you won't be beating and doing all the other abusive kinds of behavior, saying certain things, if you're more in control of your own emotions and your own whatever is going on with you, your own self-care. Because stress is something that is not unique to anybody. Everybody has stress dealing with. It's how we deal with it.
Yeah. Dr. Morgan, your energy is quite infectious. Thank you very much. We're going to shift gears. I mean, we could not have the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information and not ask him about a couple of current issues with respect to the state of affairs in the education sector, in particular in our schools, where we're between exams and summer and the new school year in September. Minister Terrelong, are there any plans to continue the distance learning experience that we would have witnessed, notwithstanding the challenges across the country, whether in terms of the consistency or lack thereof of the telecommunications apparatus? Is this likely to continue?
All right, well, before I even go there,
Yes.
Dervin, I think it's important that we get the message out there to parents that when we speak about, like discipline and abuse and everything else, discipline must be positive. So I like to say, discipline your children, but discipline them with love. This whole idea that children can't learn unless you, as one of our from CPC was indicated, one of our panelists was saying that you have to beat them and everything else, and so that is not discipline. Even if you're to say, well, all right, I'm going to just beat him 6 times or 7 times or give him 6 or 7 hits, but it does not leave a scar, it's still abuse. It is still, in my opinion, it is still abuse. Find meaningful, positive ways to discipline your children that does not involve hitting them or scarring them emotionally or psychologically. So that's my take. And again, we're moving towards a new paradigm shift where we ban corporal punishment. Corporal punishment is already banned in our early child institutions, and we have to seriously get every single Jamaican, get our stakeholders on board to ban corporal punishment nationally. The problem, Dervin, is that when you say to one person, all right, 1 slap is enough, but then it becomes extreme, because the force of the 1 slap is enough to break a child's wrist, or to break a child's arm, or to break a child's foot, or to break a child's back. When you say, okay, all right, mechanic him 1 time, and then you hit a child in the back, the child now falls to the ground, the child, this dislocates the spine, there's some other injury and everything else and stuff. So at some point, there's going to be some extreme, no matter what you say. So let's move to that sort of new norm. Children listen, in the same way you're not going to tell your boss off in a particular way, in the same way you're not going to fire up and big lip on your boss and everything, treat your children as little bosses, yes, who you've brought into this world, who deserve your love and your protection. So, education, the new normal. There have been many silver linings to COVID-19. And one such silver lining is that it has taught us as a nation that we must move full speed ahead with becoming a digital society and with becoming a society that recognizes that internet and Wi-Fi capabilities, they must be a right, a basic human right in this new age of technology. We're speaking about the fourth industrial revolution, and it must become a right in the same way that water or light is, electricity is a right. Education is a right. We cannot imagine an education in the 21st century that does not include online education, that does not include the use of technology within the classrooms and also within the home. Right. COVID has taught us that, even more importantly, education is not just the purview of the government and the schools. Education is now the purview of families. And I've always said it, we cannot have a proper education system in any country, Dervin, without the involvement of the families, without the involvement of the home unit as well. So going forward, I do envision a model where we continue with online learning as well. We've seen cases in Europe and in the United States where universities have said that all our courses, we're going to go online for the September 2020-2021 school year. One of the things that we're looking at is to see, well, how best within the COVID-19 pandemic, come September, COVID will still be here. So we now have to devise policies that could very well see, I'll phrase it in this way, that could very well see students going to school some days and some days the learning continues online. We could very well see situations where students and schools that have that proper internet capabilities, etc., Wi-Fi, internet and so forth, that they could opt to say, well, all right, well, let me continue online. One of the things online in the home, we as a government, as a ministry, and certainly with our partners in the health sector, we have to consider also what about our teachers who have certain disabilities in terms of, innate illnesses, etc. What about our students who have certain illnesses, etc.? Do we put them on a bus? Do we put them in a robot taxi? Do we put them in a classroom? So certainly a responsible ministry, a responsible government, and we have proven by our response, to the coronavirus, to this global pandemic, that we have been very, very responsible. The health and safety, security of our children, of all Jamaicans, remains our primary consideration. And so we have to think forward where we move to a digital society, which must include also internet capabilities and Wi-Fi capabilities for all our schools and all our students.
Thanks, Minister. Speaking of our digital society, there are some questions online. Let's see. Here's one. I think this one is for you, Minister. Are there any plans to increase the number of educational facilities for children with special needs?
So, I think, again, going forward, the new paradigm shift, the new normal, we should refer to our children as, children with educational needs or children with special educational needs. We have our special education unit at the ministry, and they'll be devising programs and policies to ensure that our children with special education needs, that they get the care, assistance, and the empowerment that they also need. Notwithstanding that child might have a particular need, that child still has the ability. At this point, I have to big up Digicel. For more than 15 years, Digicel has proven that they take corporate social responsibility very, very seriously. Just last week, we were at a handing over ceremony where Digicel donated 1,000 tablets, partnering with ourselves at the Ministry of Education and also the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. And 600 of those tablets will be going to our children with special educational needs. And we're not just giving them bare tablets. We've uploaded, or we're in the process of uploading special programs and apps on those tablets so that they can function as any other child would. So these are some of the plans and programs that we have going forward to ensure that every child must learn, every child will learn. In the final analysis, Dervon, an education is the best gift we can give to our children, and it's a gift that belongs to all our children.
Let's take another question from our social media platforms. Due to the changes in the behavior of children these days, are there any plans to assign a social worker to each school? That sounds like in addition to the guidance counselors.
Well, what I will say, I'll say it this way. Certainly, we have seen the requests coming in from CPFSA to have more social workers. We have employed more social workers, that I indicated earlier. Do we need to employ more social workers? Yes, we do. Do we need to ensure that we have more guidance counselors in schools or better trained guidance counselors? That is something that we are looking at. And as I've indicated earlier, we have already started that program where we're training guidance counselors with the Psychiatric Association or Psychiatric Council. Forgive me for slipping up on the name just there. But we're training them so that they have the technical skills so that they can deal with some of the behavioral or some of the psychosocial impacts or effects that we see presenting themselves within our schools, in particular after the coronavirus. Because as I mentioned, I've seen adults just get really, really depressed. And again, I have to big up the youth of Jamaica, big up our children, because the truth is they have been the real superheroes throughout this pandemic. I mean, when I see 5-year-olds, even within the constituency that I represent, 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds, and you literally see them still happy. You go visit their homes and they're happy, or sometimes you see them on the road, they're going to the shop, or they're just, and they're still happy, they're very resilient. In our school tour last week, I saw them out, I saw our young kings and our young queens in schools, and they're surviving, they're focusing, and for me, that takes great grit, it takes great courage, and it shows that the children of Jamaica, they really are good soldiers. They have been very resilient, they have shown that strength and courage to survive this pandemic, but notwithstanding that, we have to make sure that we have that special assistance within our schools to deal with any psychosocial impacts that will present, which we suspect and we're planning will present in any event.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. Mrs. Gage-Gray, here's one for you from social media. According to reports, there are more than 60 children incarcerated as being uncontrollable. Why is this still happening? And what can the CPFSA do to remedy this situation?
Thank you, Dervon. I think the issue of children exhibiting, I prefer to put it like that, children exhibiting extreme behavioral problems, and Robert alluded to it earlier. We have been seeing an increase in the numbers. I did a check on some numbers that we have coming out of the NCR, and the children exhibiting behavioral problems for some months is above those for neglect, because we had neglect as a prevalent ones. And so we have been designing strategies to treat with these children within the CPFSA. Now, Section 24 of the Child Care and Protection Act gives the judge an option of a correctional order. There have been legal discussions before and suggestions given for the amendment of the Act so that that option would have been removed. We recall in the Joint Select Committee of Parliament that was looking at the revision of both the Sexual Offences Act, the Offences Against the Persons Act, and the Child Care and Protection Act. That recommendation was made for it to be removed. I don't think the committee took the suggestion. They gave some alternatives because the critical thing about these categories of children, they are somewhere between those who have committed offences and those who are in need of care and protection. So these are children who are at severe risk of committing an offense, or some might have had some minor infractions. With the Child Diversion Act coming to being, that same Section 21 was amended that gives this option of diverting them to other programs rather than sending them to the correctional services. So the judges still have that option. But we believe that we have seen a reduction. I recall when this matter was very prevalent in the media, we had some over 200 children between police lockups, between adult correctional facilities and in the regular juvenile facilities. And I think over the years we have implemented programs, our Children and Family Support Program, we have implemented that. Our psychology unit, our Smiles Mobile is all in an effort to treat with the behavioral issues. And what are some of these issues? The law gives a parent who thinks that their child, they can't manage their child anymore, to present to the court and advise that they can't. And the judge in that regard can give several orders, which correctional order is one of them. Now, we have seen a lot of the judges through sensitization have not been given those orders. They have been given supervision order. And this supervision order is where our social workers would supervise the children within their homes. Some judges go as far as to give some conditions to that supervision order. So if the child was reported by a parent to be coming home from school or to be staying out, then they would say you must be getting by 6 o'clock or whatever the time. And so we would supervise and monitor to ensure that those are kept. So in terms of the recent media reports coming out of the public defender, we have been in touch with the correctional services. We have a schedule of all of those children, and we are working through our systems to see did any of these children interface with our system, and what were the interventions that were done, what could we do in this scenario. I do know that the OCA is also looking at those children as well in terms of their rights. And so we continue to work with these children who are exhibiting severe behavioral challenges. One of the solutions we feel that you need something in between, like a medium-term facility, not a maximum security.
Transition.
Yes, it could be a day facility, and our plans to with JSIF to have a therapeutic center is one that is moving in that direction, to say these children need to be properly assessed, screen assessed, and the appropriate intervention provided for them. And so that's where we are going in terms of the children who are beyond exhibiting serious behavioral challenges.
Yes. Whoa, it sounds like a lot to contend with, but we're sure the team at the CPFSA is up to the task, and you will play your part, and the other entities will play their part, so that our children get all the love and support that they need. There are so many questions, but again, thank you for your many questions. Every single one of them will be read by the team at the CPFSA, and whatever actions need to be taken will be taken. But in the last less than a minute that we have just enough time for our panelists to give us their closing remarks, or do we? Just a couple of seconds.
Well, just to add, Mrs. Gage-Gray and I, we've been in discussions, especially this term about uncontrollable children. And while some of our stakeholders disagreed with the amendments that we put forward, I mean, certainly I believe that we need to revisit it. I do not think that any child should be imprisoned, especially children who have not committed any legal infractions. It is a violation of their rights. And certainly that's something that as a society we need to address, and we need all stakeholders on board. Beyond that, again, our children are our heritage. They are gifts from God. As a nation, as a people, we must love our children. We must protect our children. And it might sound controversial, but guess what? If you're not ready to have a child, don't have one. A child is not something for you to go and brag about and tell your friend and say, yeah, me have a picnic, me a big man, or me a big woman. It's not. A child is a living, breathing human being. And unless and until you can emotionally, financially, and physically support a child, then it's best just wait. Wait until you're ready.
Thank you, Minister. Mrs. Gage-Gray?
We believe every child deserves protection, and we are saying that we are here to provide the assistance. If you are having a difficulty, if you are having challenges with your children, call our offices, visit our offices. We will provide the support for you, because we believe that with the support you can make. And I want to make the point that we believe that the best place for a child is their own families. And if we can restore families and help the children to survive in those households, that's what we're doing. And we are saying, if you need help, seek out the help. And importantly, if you know that a child is being abused, please report it.
Thank you, Mrs. Gage-Gray. Dr. Morgan?
I would just like to applaud the CPFSA for the work that I know that they're doing. I work very closely with the psychologists that were mentioned in the regions, and the work on trauma is real and it is vast. And I think that trauma and trauma-informed care is something that I know CPFSA is very committed to and moving forward in terms of having that understanding for everyone. And I think this is something that we need to understand as a nation, You know, I think everybody needs to understand what this impact of trauma does to our children. I think when you truly understand that, and you understand what it actually does to the brain, that it connects in a way that I think we have not connected right before, because people understand more physical impact, you know, than they do psychological impact a lot of the times, and physical and psychological cannot be separated. So I think that that's what I want us to understand as a nation, and I really do commend the work of the CPFSA, and I know that it is difficult.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Warren Thompson.
Right. So every child deserves protection. I'm saying it again. And every single Jamaican has a responsibility to look out for each other and for every single child. A child who is missing is a child who is in need of care and protection, whether that child ran away or disappeared by some other means. It's a child who needs care. It's a child who needs to be protected. It's a child whose vulnerability has been significantly increased. I just want to encourage parents to spend the time to get to know your children, know who their friends are, know where they're likely to go, know them, talk with them, show interest in their lives, and just build relationships. As Mrs. Gajeway said, we want to keep children in families. We want to keep them with you. That's the best place for them, and we want to help you to keep children and to make the environment one that is conducive for them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Finally, the last few seconds for you, Robert Williams.
So I want to say to parents, these children are your responsibility. They were given as a gift from God, so spend the time and do proper parenting. Don't ever throw up your hand in the air and say, I'm taking this child to the government, for the government to take care because I can't manage. This is your child, and together we can help you to rear this child. Every child deserves protection. They need to stay at home.
Thank you very much, Robert Williams. As we close, we would like to thank you very much for joining us, and we want to remind you to write down the information that you're seeing on your screen. To report child abuse, call 888-PROTECT. That's 888-776-8328. WhatsApp or text 876-878-2882. Email report at childprotection.gov.jm, or visit any CPFSA office island-wide. We close with the words of the great Nelson Mandela: the true character of a society is revealed in how it treats its children. Let us all work together for the greater good of our children and the future of our country. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This has been the CPFSA's Virtual Child Protection Forum. I'm Dervan Malcolm. Good night.
Whoa, protect the children, please. Me I beg you, no, protect the children, please. Every child deserves protection. Proper parenting, that's a part of the plan. Educate them about the right from wrong. Don't beat them, put down the belt, yeah, man. Talk openly to your child about safety. I be a thing that going in the country of lately. If I them alone, don't make them go places. Teach them to run away from danger. Don't face it. That's right. Protect the children, please.
Jamaica, land of wood and water. That's Jamaica, once covered with lush forests and rivers with clean, clear water. But only a small fraction of our natural forest is still standing, and our water is becoming more and more polluted. But all is not lost. Clean, clear water flows underground deep in Jamaica's heartland, the Cockpit Country, rising as springs which flow into rivers, giving many people in the west of Jamaica their water,